we did this with a company recently, 15 staff members, SME. We found 70% of every single role. So 15 staff, 70% of every single person. So essentially 70% of the whole company will be free from a time capability capacity perspective in 3 months, 4 months from now. What would you do with that time?
The AI Grapple, where the future begins.
Welcome to the AI Grapple Podcast. My name is Kate vanderVoort and I am founder and CEO of Social Mediology and the AI Success Lab. Today we are joined by Lucas Meadowcroft. Fun fact, he's the only one in the world, a tech visionary and entrepreneur who's been revolutionizing the IT and AI landscapes for over 2 decades. From his humble beginnings as a curious teenager building computers, Lucas has grown into the co-founder and driving force behind cutting-edge ventures like CROFTI, Tribu, and Pivot. In our conversation, Lucas shares the behind-the-scenes journey of creating AI solutions before the ChatGPT era, his innovative approach to helping businesses embrace automation, and his vision for what's next in technology and robotics. If you are ready to explore how AI can transform the way we work, live, and connect, this episode is for you. Hello, Lucas, and welcome to the AI Grapple Podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks very much. I'm super excited. Can't wait to dive in.
So look, before I dive into all the questions that I have for you, I would love to hear a bit about your background and how you've gotten to where you are now. We don't need to start where you were born, but, give us the goss.
I'll give you the 1 minute overview for the last 20 years. So left school, had no idea what I wanted to do in life. My mate's parents saw an advert in the paper to go and do an IT internship. So sure, nothing else to do, go do that. So I did that, and then I did a traineeship in IT. Got my first job in IT, and then gradually built my way up from there. Essentially, first 10-ish, 12 years of my life was IT support on the road, physically going around to businesses and helping them solve IT problems, from virus issues to learning how to use spreadsheets to learning how to use Facebook, like literally just IT support. And so that was first 15 years of my career. And in that journey, I really found that IT support was just a must-have. It just became a standard. But what I learned through that journey, what businesses really wanted was how to use technology better. And that really set me on my entrepreneurial journey and really, discovery of, where we are today in artificial intelligence.
Amazing. And when did you have, I think most of us, given it's still pretty recent, well, actually, I'll rephrase that question. Your journey with AI started well before everybody else's ChatGPT moment. So do you want to bring us up to your, that moment where everyone else woke up to AI? What were you doing before then?
Yeah, so this journey started 10 years ago. So essentially, we were running an IT support company, providing that IT support service, and also running an innovation consulting company at the same time. And what we're finding is that we love the innovation consulting part of the business, and that required a lot of demand from us to help businesses to innovate and become more efficient. The IT support part was literally holding us back from doing that because it's so reactive. And so we started diving into AI, back then machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, to really solve our biggest pain point in our business, in our IT support business, to eliminate all the mundane tasks. And the main mundane task back then was an IT support ticket would come into our help desk. We would then, and we being Dean, my co-founder, he would then literally have to export that information, sift through the data of what the client's asking for, categorize it, prioritize it, and then give it to the engineer and go, hey, here, engineer, go and work on this job, and this is what you need to do to solve it. It was just so mundane and boring, but it had to be done to get the job done really fast. And so that was our first into artificial intelligence and diving into how do we solve that problem for ourselves. We did that for a few years and then built this technology, and then other IT support companies went, well, can we have it? And so that's when we formed our AI company in the US, and we split that off, went that direction, went to the VC route, raised capital, built our first large language model in IT support. Before ChatGPT, before OpenAI, before this whole craze, I will say I do not recommend doing this. It was 5 years of hard work. We spent nearly $3.5 million for a product that you can get for, I don't know, not $20 a month, but essentially, maybe a couple $100,000 now. But that was our first, I guess, taste of how automation can really speed up the process, because we automated the entire triage of IT support.
Wow. Yeah. So when the rest of the world woke up to generative AI, you must have been going, boring, been there. But you must be really glad that the rest of the world has caught up. So talk to me a little bit about how you work now and some of the best opportunities, I guess, that you're seeing for businesses when it comes to implementing AI in their business.
I'm so glad the world understands what artificial intelligence is now, because we can have this conversation. When we were in our Tribu world, even 3 years ago, we couldn't talk to anyone about this, right? So I'm glad we can actually have this conversation now. Businesses still don't actually know what AI is and how to use AI in the business. This is where, your service is so crucial to organizations, right? To educate this generation on what AI is. What we're hearing on the ground is that businesses know they need it. They know they need to innovate. They know they need to keep up with technology to stay ahead of their competitors, but they don't actually understand what that means. And so when we go into an organization, we uncover all the inefficiencies in the business, typically data entry, admin, copying and pasting information from emails into, they would normally, copy and paste into spreadsheets or into their CRM systems, automated the scheduling or the booking process, the invoicing, following up on invoices, like all the mundane admin tasks that happen in a business. That's where AI is ripe for today. And I say today because it's very data driven, and that's the beauty of AI, right? And I say today because in 2 years from now, it will be a lot more advanced than what it is today. So we really focus on that data driven administrative task to help them remove that clutter from their life and their staff's life, so they can focus on what they're amazing at and what they love doing, and essentially remove everything they don't like doing.
I'm sure you deal with a very similar challenge to what we deal with, which is often I think there's two real challenges in what you've just said. One, often businesses don't know what they don't know yet, and they don't know what is possible. So it can be quite hard for them to work that out themselves. But the second is that once you say, great, let's start automating some of those processes, you figure out the data's not that great. So how do you approach that with businesses? And I guess a second part to that question is, what do you suggest businesses do if they feel like their data is a mess, they don't have enough of a structure in place to benefit from AI? What would you say to those businesses?
I guess this is a perfect segue to talk about Copilot. Most organizations have Microsoft 365. I say most, 90+% of businesses, small businesses have Microsoft 365. Copilot is a massive big topic. The reason Copilot doesn't do what the marketing says it should do is because it was built off the Fortune 500 companies, and the Fortune 500 companies have an amazing data set. Small businesses, I'm sorry to say this, but they don't have an amazing data set. You typically look at SharePoint and there's just like shit everywhere. And so that's not the case in Fortune 500 companies, because they have people who are dedicated and they have teams that just focus on making sure the data is correct, accurate, and there's heaps of we call it metadata, but essentially there's tags within document structures and hierarchies that make sense from a data perspective, and when AI comes into it. So we're not going to solve that. Like, we're not going to solve fixing up that, let's call it the SharePoint mess. What we do focus on is getting to the problem fast. And so if actually a big question that comes to us all the time is, can we have ChatGPT inside our own Microsoft 365 scenario? Because honestly, Copilot should do this, but it doesn't, unfortunately, yet anyway. And so we build, let's call it, I can't say it, like a replica ChatGPT for their own ecosystem. And the first thing we build is a knowledge base. And so essentially we pull in all the data from all the different assets. It could be Microsoft Teams conversations, files, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, PowerPoints, emails. Like, we just pull in all these different data sets within their ecosystem and build a knowledge base for that business. Because once you have an internal knowledge base, you can have a communication stream like ChatGPT with your own data for your own business. And so it's a very isolated in-house ChatGPT. Once you have that then irons out all that problem, like the question you just asked around, if your data isn't good, we'll make your data good, but it'll become an AI model. So we're not fixing your current setup and infrastructure. We're just making an AI model effective to be used in the sense of automation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm dying to know though, do you still use the front end of ChatGPT that us commoners use, or you're only in the back door?
Yeah, let's call it the back door. It's called an open API, and we always go in with the conversation around, hey, we can make this look and feel exactly how you want it to look and feel, so you can interact with it. You can have a voice conversation. It can be branded. It can be, very much your culture. Most people go, I don't have time to put my thoughts into that creative space. Can you just make it look and feel like ChatGPT? so honestly, that's what we do. But that's just from a visual perspective. But it's in their own ecosystem, and it's with their data, and it's not what you would be using, commoners would be using from a ChatGPT perspective.
I was having a chuckle the other day in our Facebook group that, there's these viral prompts that are doing the rounds at the moment where people ask ChatGPT, what do you know about me? Or based on everything you know about me, what would a book cover look like? And I said to someone in there, do you ever get the feeling that ChatGPT must be sitting there going, geez, you humans are so needy? Because it's being bombarded with people going, what do you know about me? And tell me how great I am.
And that's the scary conversation about AGI, right? So if we fast forward 10 years from now, 20 years from now, AGI is a thing. I guess this next phase of generation, when we're talking about AI, when ChatGPT, let's call it, can think for itself and talk to itself and communicate with itself and communicate with other agents and bots in its ecosystem. Don't even think about that now. That's mind-blowing, but that's where the world will be going in 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of the experts, the jury's still out on, one, if we will hit that place, but two, when we will hit that. And it's certainly one that I grapple with and ponder a lot, because when I'm teaching people about AI and we look at the different levels of AI, we're still at the really narrow or weak level of AI compared to what they're all working towards and where we're potentially heading. So just back, we've gone out now to AGI. Let's dial it back into businesses and some of the opportunities, I guess, that you're seeing at the moment. So obviously one is building something customized that helps them to manage their data, utilize. I think one of the things I'm most excited about is that concept of unlocking data. So many businesses have got their data in silos. No one has access to it. So much work goes into reports and all of this data that just sits there and is never used again. How do you help businesses approach that aspect of unlocking data and making it much more accessible?
Unlocking data is a good question, but it's more about the outcome. So when we first dive into a client's, I guess, a project that we're working on, we interview every staff member. We dive into every process that every staff member does. We create all the process maps of, hey, when this email comes in, this is what I do with this email, and this is where the information goes to, and this is how it's handled internally. So once you understand the business process, then it's more about, well, what can we do as an outcome, rather than what can we do with the data? Because if you ask anyone, what can you do with the data? It's like, well, we could do an unlimited amount of information, scenarios with the data. But it's like, what outcome are we trying to achieve? So it's really focused on typically admin data entry, but it's like report writing. It's a massive one. People spend hours, if not days, if not weeks, writing reports. We can do that in 15 minutes. Think about what's a really common one? Emails, shared mailboxes. Like one of the clients we're working with had 7 staff members managing shared mailboxes. No one now manages a shared mailbox. Every bit of information that comes into a shared mailbox, whether it's a general inquiry or a quote inquiry or an invoice, like an accounts inquiry or general inquiry, everything is actioned and responded to immediately, instantly with AI. So it's more about, well, where's the inefficiencies in the business? Let's dive into that and let's try to eliminate that, so then we can have more time to do what you love doing.
And so there's loads of opportunity. We see that every day. What are some of the challenges, or what's stopping people from embracing? Because I know you and I have talked about this offline, just some of those real challenges that businesses are facing, or they're dipping a toe in, they're not sure yet, they're kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting for best practice to emerge. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
It's the unknown. We're in the education piece right now, and this is why your service is so important, right? Because we need to educate. It's all we do every day. When there's an unknown, it's a fear, and when there's a fear, you just don't do anything, and that's typically where we're starting out. We're only working with people who have the mindset of, I know I need to do this, but I don't know how to start, or I'm scaling nationally or internationally, and I know I can do this without needing admin staff. So they got the mindset. They have no idea how to do it. That's why they're getting us on board. But they got the right mindset, and that mindset is driving the change. And the second thing is, this is not a technology conversation. This is a transformational business change conversation. Do we have the right mindset, whether it's the staff members, the leadership team, the directors? Do we have the right mindset in the business and the right culture to go, we want to go on this journey? And what I typically say, this is not a 3-month journey. This is a 12-month, 2 years, 5-year journey, because your business is going through an evolution, and you need to be prepared for that. One of the most common statements I say all the time is that everyone loves the idea of innovation unless it affects them personally. Because they go, yeah, we want to innovate. We want to be a great innovation company, and we want to push the boundaries. We want to change the world. And typically the directors go, yeah, but you can innovate the whole business, just don't innovate my role. And so they want to keep doing what they've always done. And so there's this whole mindset conversation around this change. And this is why change management consultants are so important. It's why what you offer, Kate, is so important, because this is not a technology conversation, but that's the biggest fear and the biggest unknown when it comes to AI.
One of the things, and this is one of those grapple conversations, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is having a human-centered approach to AI. And you'd be finding the same thing, that for a lot of businesses that care about their people, that concept of, I can do it all without an admin team, what does that mean for the admin team? So what are your thoughts? And I'm not necessarily asking you to, put a stake in the sand, but what are your thoughts around how we can manage what I see as a pretty massive transition? I don't think, we liken it to electricity and to the tractor and all the things that have, really fundamentally transformed society over decades, centuries. This feels a little different to me, and I think it's happening at a pace that we're not used to. So how do you approach that conversation around looking out for the people in a business as we go through this process?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. What we're going through now is no different to what we've gone through the last 200 years. We've had those evolutions, right? Especially in the Industrial Revolution. But that was over a 20-year or 30-year period. This is happening over an 18th-month, 2-year period. And so that's the difference, right? Us humans are the ones slowing down the use of this technology. Not because we're wanting to or needing to, or we're trying to push back. We just can't grapple. We just can't grapple with it fast enough, right? And so what I'm saying, especially when I see the light bulb moment go off in some of these people's mind when we're having this conversation, especially like some of the staffs we've interviewed, they've physically been in that company for 30 years. They've been doing the invoicing the same way for 30 years. They've been using that spreadsheet the same way for 30 years. It's like, take a step back. If you had 5 hours a day back, what would you do with that 5 hours? This is now your chance to become passionate about something. Because I do ask the question, do you love doing what you're doing? Like, are you actually really passionate about doing that data admin entry role? And at first they go, yeah, I love my job. And then they go, no, do you love doing your role? Do you love doing that task? Not one person has ever said to me they love doing data entry. And so it's about changing the mindset and the conversation to, well, what do you love doing? Most people don't know. And so it's like, well, this is your chance to take the time to find out what you actually want to do, because that role, that task will not exist in 12 months from now, will not exist in 2 years from now if the business embraces this change. So this is your time to take the reins by the hands and reinvent yourself. Now that's scary because people don't like change. And so it's a question to the individual person, but that's why we always get the leadership team to get involved. It's got a top-down approach, but it's bringing everyone on the journey. Everyone needs to be a part of this change. Everyone needs to be on this journey. It needs to be a group scenario. The whole culture needs to shift at the same time, and you need to support each other because it's going to be tough. And people will cry and they will most likely quit and they will, hide themselves under a rock. This is a perfect time to help yourself as a human to change what you want to do, hopefully for the better, and find new ways of working and find new passions in your life.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I'm always interested in the conversation of, well, if you had that extra 5 hours, how many more clients could you serve? How many more products could you make? How many more? And, there's a lot of systems and a lot of things in businesses that are already broken, and AI is not going to break those. It actually has the potential to fix some of those.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You mentioned...
I'll just say one more thing, sorry, is that business owners get it. It's the staff members that it's hard for them to understand. So that's why it's got to be this whole approach, because we did this with a company, and this can be any size business. We did this with a company recently, 15 staff members, SME. We found 70% of every single role. So 15 staff, 70% of every single person. So essentially 70% of the whole company will be free from a time capability capacity perspective in 3 months, 4 months from now.
That's incredible when you think about what could be done with that time. And it's interesting.
I'll ask you this, Kate. This is what people can't answer. What would you do with that time? Because everyone's busy.
I know what I'm doing in my business with the extra time. I'm doing things that I had given up doing because I just never had the time. I never got round to it. And so now I'm actually able to, with the efficiencies and productivity that we've managed to embed into the business, I'm actually now able to create those in-depth lead magnets and have a podcast that I'm passionate about where I get to grapple with these conversations and do those things that do bring me joy and that do actually help serve our community and our audience better. And I'm always encouraging businesses to look at it from the same perspective. It's interesting, though, that you talk about that top up versus bottom down, but no, bottom
top down approach. Get the leadership team on first. Yeah.
I am actually encountering a lot of the bottom up. So people, it'll be the graphic designer or the marketing manager within a business, or it'll be the administrative person who's like, this tool can really help me, and they'll start to use it, and then suddenly other people across the business are going, well, how did you do that? And then it is actually very much a bottom-up approach. But I'm also encountering businesses where there's a huge desire internally to implement and integrate AI, but there's actually a bottleneck at the leadership level where it's a lack of understanding. It's a feeling like it is a tech capability that they don't have, when it's not so much, as you say, the tech capability that's the issue. Have you found that at all in some of the clients that you're working with?
100%. Every single employee that we ever talk to has used ChatGPT or Gemini or AI in some form, and finding these other apps. 20,000 apps have now been launched in the last 18 months. So they're all testing and measuring these apps. It's always from the bottom up. It's always from the employees pushing this conversation. The bottleneck is the leadership team. The bottleneck is the directors, because they don't have time. It's like this section over here they got to put hours into. Like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to learn it. Don't worry about it. So the staff are pushing this conversation, and they're like, well, that's the next year problem. That's the 2-year problem, because I don't have time for it. And so the employees are really pushing it, but it doesn't ever go anywhere because they don't make decisions. They're waiting for the leaders to make decisions.
And so what would you say to those leaders who are sitting on the sidelines waiting for someone else in their industry to embrace the technology, for an off-the-shelf platform that's going to do what they want to do, or for best practice to emerge, or the guidelines and safety guardrails to emerge that tell them how to do it? What would you say to them at this point in time?
I'd actually say ignore all of that and focus on what's for you personally. So ignore the business and think about yourself personally. If you these are the feedback we get from business owners that finally embrace it, right? I get to go on a holiday for the first time in 10 years and I didn't take my laptop, I didn't have my phone turned on, I got to switch off. That's the feedback we get. I worked with a client where they were looking at retiring and handing down the business. They thought it was 3 years, 4 years away. Within 3 months, we were able to get that person out of the business because they were retiring and hop in their camper van and go travel around the country. Like, think about what you want personally. And typically, if it's most business owners that we deal with have a family, that family usually doesn't get to see the father or the mother, whoever's running the company. The kids don't get to see the parents as much as they would like to because they're in the business working so hard. Come from that direction. Do you want more time with your family? Do you want to be able to go on holidays and not have to switch on and work? If you can answer that question yourself, then the rest becomes easy because we can make that happen. That's where I think you really need to come from a personal perspective, not from a business or a compliance or a legislation point of view.
Excellent. There's so much in all of what you've already talked about, but I'm keen to hear from you your view, because it's one that I struggle with in conversation that comes up all the time in business use cases of AI, is how they deal with data privacy, security. I think it's interesting I'm fascinated about some of the geopolitical issues that are emerging around AI, and particularly with a particular election that is occurring as we're speaking. Whoever gets in is going to fundamentally dictate how AI evolves over the next few years based on their approach. Sorry, I took it from data privacy out to political. Let's bring it back to data privacy. How do you approach that with your clients who are concerned about, but I'm putting my data into, a platform that's learning my business strategy and may somehow give that to somebody else?
It is the wild, wild west out there. So you need to be, this is a conversation you need to take very seriously. And why I say the wild, wild west is there's, as I said, 20,000 apps have been built and launched. Those apps will ask for your data to be able to build a little model for your business, whether it's solving, marketing or sales or, operations or finance. Just don't do it. Don't put your information in those apps because you don't know what's happening with that data unless you really dig into it. This is one of the reasons we're still custom building the large language model inside the ecosystem of those organizations because it is the wild, wild west. And so if you're on Microsoft, keep it all within your ecosystem. If you're on Google, keep it in your ecosystem. If you're on Amazon, keep it in your ecosystem. Don't let it go out of that space, and house it where it's secure. And that you can somewhat trust it, 99% trust that that information won't go back to these large language models and then back to the public eyes. If you're using Gemini or ChatGPT public facing, not the paid version, that whatever you put in there, it's now public available, right? And so if you are going to use that in your business as a test case, pay for it. Pay the $20 a month US, pay the $35 Aussie, whatever it is. Just pay for it, because then you can turn on the feature that literally says your data will not be shared. There is controversy in the industry to say, well, what does that really mean? Are they actually going to abide by that? That's a whole different conversation.
And that button actually disappears at times, just interestingly. But if you do buy the Teams version or the enterprise version, then it is definitely ring-fenced.
Yeah, that's right. Well, definitely ring-fenced.
Well, according to the terms and conditions that I signed when I signed up.
This is a hot topic. Don't worry about that.
Who's reading those hundreds of emails at the moment from every platform changing their terms and conditions, which says now, and it's a really interesting one, I think, that no one really has the answer to, is all of the platforms, zero. Like every platform that businesses are using, they're changing. I shouldn't have just mentioned zero, because all of them, even the social media platforms that we're using, they're changing their terms and conditions to say that your data can be used to train the model. And no one's reading all of those emails. And so it's really interesting what we're actually barreling into and what we're handing over and what we're willingly doing. But then the flip side of that is that our data is already in the Google environment. It's already in the Microsoft environment. It's already in those places. And so, yes, it is interesting as to how AI changes that.
This is a really good thing to keep in mind. And I don't know if the listeners here are using Facebook, Instagram, but essentially Meta AI. So Llama 3, Llama 4, that's been embedded into the Facebook products under Meta. That version of AI is a ring-fence AI within the Meta database, but essentially anything that you type in there, anything that you consume, any bit of data, including any of the conversations you have with anyone in your networks, is within that data, that large language model. And this is the controversy around it. Meta just hit 500 million active users. 500 million active users using that artificial intelligence large language model within the Meta platforms, i.e. Facebook, Instagram, etc., WhatsApp. That is mind-blowing. Think of the conversations that are happening on a second by second across all the users and what's being fed into this machine.
Well, and when they rolled it out, I mean, I still fall into the trap where I think I'm pressing on something else, and then all of a sudden I'm in Meta AI. And, I've done work with Meta, so I'm very familiar with the platforms. A lot of people are not as familiar, but it's been very clever how some of these platforms have just inserted it into the environments that we're really familiar with and are not necessarily even conscious. But I know when they rolled out Meta AI and seeing people get this off my phone, and you can't. If you want to use those platforms for free, you are now part of the ecosystem that they're creating there.
The other really good example, then we'll move on, is the new iPhone 16, the latest Samsung. Essentially, if you look at iPhone 16 and Siri, Siri is now becoming kind of like ChatGPT voice conversation. It's all embedded. Because your iPhone is always listening, unless you go in and turn off every single security aspect, which most people don't, to turn off the listening devices. Think about every conversation you have. This conversation here, my iPhone sitting right next to me. This conversation and every conversation that you have is now being listened to, or it always has, but essentially now being listened to and absorbed into their large language model. Now, take a moment to think about that.
Oh, I do often. Yeah. And I don't think we're going to come up with any answers, because there aren't any at the moment. But I find it very difficult to then not go, well, that's what this podcast is about, though, is creating a space where we can grapple with some of those issues that, the reality is, as a society, we have barreled headlong into this. And I'm not just 100% pro AI, pro tech. I have a very healthy dose of, I'm probably 60-40 now. I was 50-50 for a long time, but I'm probably now 60% thrilled and exhilarated about the potential that AI has for humanity, and 40% flippin' terrified about what could go wrong. But I think it's really important that we have the conversations so that people can make conscious decisions. And I was at a speaking engagement the other day where someone got very upset about the fact that they can't get Meta AI off Facebook and they have no choice. They have to. And I said, well, you do have a choice. You don't have to be on that platform. Oh, but I have to be on the platform because that's where I speak to my colleagues and that's where I speak to my family. Yeah. It's like, but listen to your language there. You actually have a choice. You don't have to be on that platform. But if you want to be there, this is the environment that you're now, engaged in. So I think it's important that people like us who understand maybe a bit more about the technology that sits behind what's happening, that we do talk about it, because people need to make conscious choices and decisions about their behavior as it relates to AI.
And especially in the social media space, with the unfortunate situations that's happening in Australia right now and all around the world with bullying online and unfortunately kids committing suicide, and that's all driven by algorithms. Yes, there's people involved, but still very algorithm driven. There's a really big push in the US right now around these platforms, and around a lot of people moving away from majority of them and all going to X, because they're saying X is kind of like a controlled open source platform for the whole Elon Musk world, where this conversation isn't happening, whether it most likely is, but this is like they're feeling more protected around X being X, the X Twitter. I should mention that, around X being more sensible with the information it's collecting, and then how it's being consumed and used, and not reinforcing algorithms back down people's throats and so forth. But that's a whole different conversation. This is a debate happening in the US. But why I'm saying this is people are physically deleting TikTok, deleting Facebook, deleting Instagram. Not so much WhatsApp, because it is an encrypted message platform, but they're deleting these platforms. Perception is probably the easiest way to say it. They're trusting in, say, the X platform over these other platforms for this exact same reason.
Well, I talk to a lot of clients at the moment about particularly digital marketing and social media marketing, that the default setting for people now is mistrust, because you can see a video of me speaking fluent Dutch, like my surname, and behind the scenes, I speak one word of Dutch. It's a swear word, and it's the only word I learned from my father. But people don't trust what they see anymore. And so I'm fascinated to see how these platforms are going to evolve to deal with that issue, because what do we do when it's just AI talking to AI on social media? And then, why do we need to be there? And if we've got AI going out and giving us summaries of what's happening in the world around us that are highly attuned and personalized to us, which personally I can't wait for, and already I'm using all the tools that, do that to a level, but I'm excited for the next iteration of that, then what does that mean if you're not actually out engaging on those platforms with other humans?
This is why I think let's pivot the conversation back to the business world, is that interaction and intersection between humans and AI, and making that very fluent, and making sure the human is still in control. We always say, especially around sales, or around quoting, or around invoicing, there needs to be a review process in place. Someone needs to review that information, the figures, the numbers. Is it correct? Like, you're the one that's been doing this role for 10, 20 years. Is that information correct? And so, yes, get AI to automate the rest of it, but get to a point, it's like that verification piece, that human interaction needs to happen before it goes out to a customer. In my personal opinion, that's what you should be doing for the next year or 2 years. So that there will be that admin task required, let's call it, but essentially that's verification, right? You want to make sure you're still in control. Can you get to the point that you can trust AI 100%? For that particular task, absolutely. But we're not saying, hey, we trust AI and we're just going to roll it out to the whole business, and the next minute runs a whole company without me getting involved. No, we're not saying that at all. It's very task driven, and we solve one piece of the pie as you go through. You will see, because we've been developing this behind the scenes with the latest open API integrations with all these platforms. Like, you would have seen the avatar software that you can get to essentially replicate yourself, and then use that in really good, training, onboarding, customer onboarding, vendor onboarding type of scenarios. The live interaction conversation, because now we have the voice interaction integration. This will be on our website. We've already developed it. We're waiting for the actual platforms to catch up to where we're up to, because they're not quite there yet. We will have a live interaction conversation with myself, ask any question on our business, go through the entire sales journey, start to finish, visually voice conversation. Without, obviously, you'll think it's me, but it's absolutely not me. It's all AI driven. But you can do that now. By the end of this year, like, we have come so far in such a short period of time. I remember the whole Tribu days from like 2018, 2019 through to like 2022 before ChatGPT. It's like that was hard. Like that was really hard. we had like developers and PhD and artificial intelligence like experts around the world figuring this shit out. You can now do that like within a few weeks. Like it's just insane on how fast this has moved.
Yeah, and I show that as an example in my workshops around, platforms like Hey Gen. And I know the last time I saw it on someone's website, I think it was about a 6-minute turnaround time in terms of rendering that video. So I'm super excited for those live AI avatars that respond in real time. I think that's going to be a complete game changer for a lot of businesses. But it's one of the things that obviously we come at this from slightly different perspectives just based on our business. But I'm really encouraging people to get familiar with what prompting means and how to use these, even if it's the front end tools, the consumer, generative AI tools, so that as these massive leaps in capability occur with the technology, that you're ready for it and that you're not suddenly trying to figure it all out when, we're handing over the keys to AI.
Yeah, I'll mention this, and then I think this hopefully will help, especially with the audience, and this is your entire focus, right? What I say is there's 20,000 apps that have been developed. Use them, but keep them in a silo. So get your staff to start testing and measuring each of these applications that suit them. So these apps that have been developed, essentially, they solve really niche problems in your business or personal life. But let's talk about business. Get an app off the shelf and use it. But be careful with the data you put in there and just focus on solving that particular problem in your business and use it as a test case. And that will, it'll build trust that, AI can actually do what it's designed to do. And 2, you can build this community inside your organization of everyone testing and measuring and just start the vibe and start the conversation as a cultural perspective. Then it gets to the point of going, okay, now, Kate, can you come and educate us on how we then take it from like that test and measure to rolling this out into a whole business? And then I say, don't use those apps because we don't know if those companies will even be around in 12 months from now because they'll run out of funding and so forth. But at least then they've started that self-education journey. And then you can go, great, now let's take that education to the next step and educate on how we can roll out this technology throughout the entire business and get everyone adopting the new way of working.
Yeah, I love that. We're always talking about creating that playground where people can test and try and have a real sense of curiosity and learning around it rather than punishing people for using the tools to make their lives easier. So, Lucas, Absolutely. You and I could talk for days about this, but I want to, as we're starting to wrap up, just ask you, what is your favorite AI tool and why?
That's a tough one. I'm loving playing with yeah, I'm loving playing with Notebook LLM right now. Have you guys seen the Google?
Yes.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty interactive. There's still a lot of bugs on the beta platform. But I love
for the Australian accents for the audio overviews, and then I'm all in.
Yeah, that's a consumer app, right? And so for the listening in, it's essentially let's take our information, take our context, our website, any PDF documents, capability statements, putting it all into a model, and then turning that into a podcast of 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that might be, right? And so that
22 minutes is the longest one I've had.
22 minutes.
Yeah.
So essentially, when I say put into a podcast, there's already been businesses built from this in the States. News radio stations. That's hard to even think what a radio station is called anymore. Radio stations that have built their entire business off using technology like this to essentially have this podcast. It's pretty damn cool. So that's fun to play with. Like obviously playing in the Hey Gen space heavily.
Just on that Notebook LM too, I think that's a really good platform for people to start exploring what you're talking about, which is a closed environment too, because you could upload 50 of your documents and start doing an analysis and accessing that data across different documents. And that's a really good example of what you were talking about before, which is building a custom solution within a business. It's a great way to test that out and start to think about what that might look like.
Yeah, and gradually roll it out, right? So say when we present our full report, when we do the analysis on a business, that report's typically 50, 60 pages, right? People don't want to read 50, 60 pages. We do a physical video, which is like 20 minutes explaining the 60 pages. So it's like an overview. So that's just like a really good process to like ingest exactly what you need to know and then take the time to go and read it. But this notebook LLM adds that extra curiosity to go, well, actually, you've got these two components, which you can definitely digest, but just something different and funky and a different way of learning. Also ingest this as well, ingest this information. So then you're adapting to different people's auditory and visual and responses, and then you can absorb that data in a different manner. But it also then goes, this is AI. We didn't do this. Like, it's a good conversation starter. And so if you're out there, report's really good, right? So if you're out there and you, I know we're diving into one platform out of 20, but anyway, it's pretty fun. If you are providing a report to a client and that report is 10 pages, 50 pages, doesn't matter how long it is, and you can turn that into a quick 3-minute, 5-minute podcast and give that to your client, like it's the information comes across so much quicker and easier than getting someone to read that entire report.
I'm just hoping that we're going to have the capability to have it use our voices rather than the Bill and Sally or whoever they are that you just keep hearing over and over again in Notebook LM.
Can I finish with that topic and then I'll let you wrap up? So
Sure.
That's the consumer platforms that that everyone's essentially using, right? We play with the back-end API, so we can essentially tailor it to exactly what you need. So we'll say, do you want it to be your voice? I'll record 3 minutes of your voice. It is now your voice. This is the scary part about privacy, right? This podcast going live, I've got your voice. I can replicate you in an instant. And so that's what you need to keep in mind, right? If you do anything online, any content creaters, any
the horse is bolted for all. The horse is bolted for us content creators. Way too late for that.
That's what we can do today without even waiting for that consumer app to be live.
You and I are going to be having a conversation about that offline. I want that in my business now. All right, Lucas, as we start to wrap up, I always ask this question at the end of the AI Grapple podcast, which is, when you stand on the hill and you look at what's coming in the next 12, 18, 24 months, what do you see coming? What do you see as the biggest opportunities?
Robotics. I think look at the latest bots that are being released, whether it's Boston Dynamics or they call it the Elon Musk world, but essentially all the awesome opportunity when it comes to robotics, right? Elon did say 2026. Let's say 2028. Let's say by 2030, we have an opportunity to get a robot to come to our home or be in our house, do all the cooking, the cleaning up, all the chores we personally don't want to do in life for $100 a month subscription. Like, that is just insanely next level. Is that going to happen? Most likely not that quick, because there'll be compliance and governance, and people don't like the idea of AGI and robots killing humans and all that jazz, which I highly get why. We don't want Terminator. But from I always talk about business efficiency. If my life could also be efficient, how much time do I have back to do stuff that I love doing? That's what I can't wait to see.
Yeah. I've interviewed a couple of professors of robotics and heard about some of the things that they're working on. And I always ask that question about how are you going to get over the fear that people have about having this technology in their homes. And every time they have said, we're going to see them in public spaces first. So whether it's, emptying bins for council or doing parking fines or clearing the wards in hospitals, that'll be the first interface where we start to see them, and then we'll want them in our own homes. So I also am looking
it's already
forward
there, and the US already has it. Like, you already jump in a car with no people driving and it's completely driverless. Yeah. That's a robot. People just don't realize because it doesn't look like a human.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucas, it's been so great speaking with you today. Thank you very much. If people want to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
The great thing about my name, Lucas Meadowcroft, is I'm the only one in the world. So you can just search for my name and you'll find me on every social media channel. My direct contact details are on my websites. So you can reach out to me direct, and I'm more than happy to provide them to Kate, and more than happy to jump on and dive into all things AI automation at any time.
Fantastic. And we'll certainly put all of those links in the show notes. Thanks so much, Lucas, for your time today. It's been great talking.
Thank you very much. It's been awesome. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the AI Grapple. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform. We would love to hear your thoughts, so reach out with any questions or comments about the show. Until next time, keep grappling with AI and stay curious.